Welcome one and all. It's time for another succulent battle report, Kings of War style. The disgusting, tentacly Nightstalkers versus the disgusting, sweaty Ogres. And it's 2,000 points of goodness, and as you can see here, we may end up with a Titan off. Let's have a look at the battlefield, and you will see that we have a massive blob of Nightstalkers and several blobs of Ogres. So, let's have a look at the lists. Oh, by the way, we are playing the new, improved push scenario from the Clash of Kings book, where it's been modified so that each unit can only carry one token, which changes it significantly, because previously you would see, for instance, one unit out on the flank holding 3 tokens and just runs unopposed to the other side. And that was a standard strategy. That's now no longer particularly valid. And yeah, so let's have a look at the lists. Now, ignore the name at the top of the list there, because I modified it from the list from a previous event and didn't change the title when I printed it out. So, we've got a regiment of doppelgangers, which I haven't used very much at all, but they do mimic the opponent's attack profile when they fight. So if you can get them into the fight, pretty damn tasty, and they're not that expensive. Scarecrow Horde, just very cheap, and got to chew through them. 2 Tormentor Troops. So these are the new Reaper variants, so they can jump over the enemy or jump over your own troops. They count themselves as 1 height higher when declaring charges, and they can fly. So very nice, can jump, and they need to hide as well because they're only defense 3. Butcher Horde, very standard. A Ravager Horde with the Fire Oil, which gives them extra piercing against regeneration, but there is no regeneration in the enemy army, so we'll ignore that right now. 2 regiments of Shadow Hounds. Now, you can see I've made them quite expensive because I've put some items on them. One of them has the Helm of the Drunken Ram, which gives it extra thunderous charge. One of them has Brew of Sharpness, so they hit on 3s. Now, with Ferocious Charge, if you declare a fresh unhindered charge into the enemy, you get +1 to hit. So, when the Brew of Sharpness unit charges in, if it's an unhindered charge, they will be hitting on 2s with their 20 attacks. So yeah, these guys are really good now. And of course, if you're playing on a table with loads of terrain, then it's less impressive because they're never really going to be hitting as hard. And the Helm of the Drunken Ram, giving them Thunderous Charge too. So really, this unit is just doubling down on what it already does, which is looking for unhindered charges. And on the occasion when you have to make a hindered charge, then they will still keep one of those Thunderouses. So maybe if you end up in a position where you need to make a hindered charge, it's still going to be slightly useful. Soul Flayers, just 1 regiment, with Wind Blast of course, and probably not worth spamming them anymore now that they're only speed 8, but still a solid choice in the list. They still do a good job. We've got the Shadow Hulk in there, just the 1, not 3, and it's just a big solid block for the enemy to get past, and he can do some good damage on occasion. We've got the Portal of Despair to give inspiring and also to be a roadblock, and it's also a decent unit for carrying tokens as well. Then we've got a Dreadfiend who provides a little bit of extra speed and a little bit of hitting power and some dread. So, the opposing army, it is, this is only, I think I've copied the wrong list. Yeah, this is a picture of because I played 3 games against pretty much the same Ogre list, but with tweaks to it. So I think this version is incorrect, so it should be the 2,000 point list. So, most of it's the same though. So we've got 2 Sharpstick units, 1 Horde with the exploding pendant, 1 regiment, 2 Shooter Hordes, they're the same. Hunters with Helm of Confidence, they're the same. There's only 2 warrior units because it's the lower point level list, so just 2. There is, let's see, I don't think, no, this is the one that does not have a Crocodog. So there's no Crocodog Wrangler. There is a Giant. There is no Sergeant on a Chariot. But there is, let's see. Okay, this was tweaked actually, so I don't have a picture of the actual list because this game was played after another game where my opponent determined, you know what, Cuzlo Madfall, he's pathetic. I want this chariot in there instead. So tweaked the list. So this picture is out of date. So the chariot guy is in there, who is here on the list. And there is a Berserker Bully, who is there. And there is a Standard Bearer, who is there. So the main thing, there's one less unit of Ogre Warriors. And Cuzlo isn't there anymore from the 2,000 point list that you would have seen on one of the previous battle reports. And yeah, so the Ogre Warriors, 2 of them can redeploy if they wish to. I think it's the ones on the flanks there that are the Warriors, so they could redeploy if they wish. Now, with this being push, of course, you're going to have 3 of your units, and they're going to be carrying tokens, and you've got another one in the middle to fight over as a bit of a tiebreaker. And they're worth double if you get them into the enemy half entirely, the unit that's carrying them. So what's my plan? Put my tokens on units that are already slow. So the Portal of Despair and the Scarecrows are good candidates. Doppelgangers potentially as well, they're not very fast. And then I want to hit things with my dogs, and I want to hit them fast. Nightstalkers, they're slightly resistant to shooting with the stealthy. So I'm hoping my opponent will not inflict much damage, because most of the shooting coming at me, I think it's all on 5s actually, so it'd be on 6s against everything apart from the Portal of Despair. So occasionally people do kind of waste their shooting at the portal, when it is just there to absorb pain. If you're not shooting at the other stuff, that means it's doing its job. So the fact that it doesn't have stealthy, sometimes people will put resources into shooting it, thinking, well, it's the only thing that's not stealthy and I've got to shoot something. But really, some of the other stuff is just as squishy because it's not got as high a defense, for example, as the Portal of Despair, like the Doggos. So, I've got the Soul Flays over on this side against some Hunters. Oh, those are the Hunters, actually. So the Warriors are there and there. Yeah, so the Warriors are on the flank and at the back. So Soul Flayers against these Hunters. What I want to do is just stop them flanking my army, keep them away, keep them at arm's length, and I plan to do that with Wind Blast. Just going to try and Wind Blast them and stay away from them. Don't want to engage them at all, and if they come close enough that Wind Blast isn't an option to keep them away anymore, I've got Butchers over here and I've got the Doppelgangers. So I would prefer those 3 units to be involved in the game somehow, though, not just fighting this one unit. We'll see if any redeploying takes place in a minute, though. In the middle, we've got Scarecrows, we've got 2 units of Tormentors behind them to hide, so they're not going to get shot, and then when the time comes, they'll leap over the Scarecrows into combat. I'm not going to throw them in willy-nilly, I'm going to wait for the right time to strike with them. Shadow Hulk is just going to steam forward, because this little gun battery here, these 2 shooter hordes, I want to kill those guys very fast. So the dogs are going to go straight on the hill as soon as I get a chance, and if my opponent goes first, I'm hiding behind the hill. If you're thinking that the terrain looks a bit lopsided, that's because my opponent has set up the terrain in such a way that the roll-off would actually make a difference to choosing a side. There are factors that you would look into. For example, these big view-obstructing hills, but you can also get onto them for extra thunderous charge. This side's got this little castle in the middle of it. So, let's see if my opponent does any redeploying. You can see that the giant is behind the shooters. And my opponent... oh yeah, the Dreadfiend is looking down on this side, pretty much on his own. If we go back, you can't even see him, because he's all the way out there. So, for redeploying, my opponent has built kind of this marching column by redeploying Ogre hordes of Ogre Warriors behind the Sharpsticks. And the tokens, I've got 1 on the Portal of Despair, 1 on the Scarecrows, 1 on the Doppelgangers. My opponent has 1 on the Standard Bearer and 1 on each of these 2 Ogre hordes. Now, when I saw this across the table, it's a little bit blurry, the picture, but you get the idea. As soon as I saw this, I thought there's a tower there, and those 2 really powerful Ogre Warrior units are stuck behind this horde. I do not want to kill the horde, because that's going to free up the ogres to get past them and fight me. But if I get a chance to chaff up that horde of the enemy there, the Sharpsticks, with the Portal of Despair, that would be amazing, because they're going to take ages killing one or the other. And if that can keep some of the powerful ogre units out of the game, that's a good way to kind of rebalance, because I'm giving up maybe more units worth over on this side to worry about the hunters, because the butchers maybe can go and get involved, but the doppelgangers and the soul flayers are both going to be used really to counteract the hunters. So I have to look for somewhere else where I'm going to get good value. And I think that the Portal of Despair going after them, if I can block up that unit and cause a traffic jam for the enemy, that is very good value out of him. Which means that all my other stuff, like my dogs and my Shadow Hulk, can be focused on chasing after the shooters. Now, my opponent does make me go first after winning the roll-off, which is, let's see, what would I do in this situation? What can the shooters actually shoot at in the first round? They could shoot at a Shadow Hulk, who is stealthy of course. They can't really see anybody else. So I can understand not going first for that reason. But this is push as well. So if you don't go first, you run the risk that you're going to get pinned back by a fast-moving enemy army, and you'll end up fighting kind of along this line, rather than along this line, which is where you would prefer to be fighting on push. So I can see an argument both ways, but my opponent makes me go first. I've moved my Dread Fiend up the flank, staying out of charge range of everybody, just being a threat to the enemy. In the middle, everyone's moved forward. I've kept out of charge range of the ogres with my doggos, but they are on the hill, and if you don't shoot them off, they are going to hit you. So that is what I'm laying down here. I'm thinking that they'll probably combine fire, and they may well shoot down one of the units. Because even though they're hitting on 6s, there are 2 of them, and they're certainly capable of killing one of the units of dogs if they combine their fire. The Shadow Hulk is in range to charge the enemy as well, so they could charge the Shadow Hulk, but I don't think shooters really want to be doing that. That sounds like a bad idea. And the Berserker Bully could potentially charge the Shadow Hulk, I think. If he's got wild charge, so he could roll high enough to charge in there. And everyone else is just moving up, keeping pace with each other. Soul Flayers hanging back a bit. Now they're carrying that token, it's just fallen off the base there. And yeah, the Scarecrow is obviously very slow, but the Tormentors are just staying right behind them, ready to pounce out. So it's like a little bunker that they're using to advance. And I'm quite happy with that setup. If this Chariot wants to come and harass, then who's it going to harass really? Because the dogs are so fast they don't care, because they're not going to be creeping up slowly, they're just going to charge straight in. And I've got close enough so the shooters can't move backwards to avoid being charged, by the way. The massive 20-inch charge range of the doggos. And I've put the little token on this one to show that it has Inspiring, because I've put Inspiring on it from the Portal of Despair. I thought it'd be a good idea to have it over here, because they're probably going to start shooting me. Okay, so moving into the enemy turn, what do? Well, one unit of shooters moves forwards, and the Berserker Bully is hiding behind them. Because, let me just show you what I wanted to do. So if they just stayed in that exact position, and then fired, because these guys moved sideways into the difficult terrain, which is a valid idea, because you wouldn't be facing an unhindered charge from the ferocious charge wielding dogs, which means they're hitting you much less hard than they would otherwise. So good move there. My plan at this stage is to charge one unit of dogs into the shooters and the other unit of dogs into the Berserker Bully, thinking I would probably kill them both. I've got a good chance. And the Shadow Hulk could then move up as well. I could maybe even double charge the Shadow Hulk and one unit of dogs into the shooters. And then, I don't know if the Shadow Hulk would be in range if they stay there though. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure if I actually got myself to within charge range or not here. But I've definitely moved up. And yeah, that would be interesting. If I could kill both those with the dogs, they would then get hit by the giant, but I'd have my Shadow Hulk moving in and these Ravagers who are behind the Shadow Hounds, and they're the shooty butchers, so they'd be moving in as backup. But what my opponent actually does is move one unit of shooters forwards, doesn't shoot with any of them. So I think he's just faced Nightstalkers a lot before and shot at stealthy things, hitting on 6s and done nothing, and thought, you know what, I'm not even going to bother, I'm just going to get into a position that I find more favourable, I'm not going to let you hit everything you want to. So hides the Berserker Bully behind the shooters, so I can't now charge it. However, he is in charge range of the Shadow Hulk definitely now. So what I'm actually going to do is charge the Shadow Hulk into these ones, and charge both units of Shadow Hounds into those shooters, which is Is it overkill? I'm not sure, because one of the units is going to be going into difficult terrain and probably won't do that much. The other one is going to be doing most of the heavy lifting, but the reason I need both of them is because if I just send in one, it's going to be hindered. I need to send in both so that one is unhindered. And then if I kill them, I can then turn them kind of back to back so they're not giving up flank charges to anybody. And this situation here, I'm liking the look of this. The position I wanted to create, which was to charge the Portal of Despair into this unit and keep those blocked in, is still looking on because they haven't come beyond this wall yet. So the only way they get into the fight is if, after I charge the portal in there, if they declare a double charge with the ogres and these guys. Now, I'm not sure whether they can do a double charge in that situation, because would these guys slide along to create enough frontage for these guys to physically fit past the terrain to get there? I think you only slide along to create an equal frontage, or you slide along to create space for them physically to reach past your unit. I don't know if you would account for terrain with that as well. So that's an interesting one for someone to comment on, but it'll come up in a minute when they've got a dilemma to answer. The hunters are facing my flank, so I'm going to advance up my soul flayers and then try and wind blast them away. But in order to do that, I'll have to move the doppelgangers backwards because the soul flayers aren't that fast anymore. So you can see my Dreadfiend is charged into those sharp sticks, just on a couple of wounds, but I think overall I should just win that war of attrition there. The Shadow Hounds do make their double charge into the shooters and kill them quite handily. The giant, Shadow Hulk should I say, goes in and kills the other shooters in one round, which is really impressive from him. Doesn't normally roll that many attacks. But both shooter units are dead. Shadow Hounds are safe from this side. So I got the old laser out to make sure that this giant couldn't see them. So they're safe there. And they're back to back. So this chariot can't recharge this unit. Portal of Despair just does 1 damage. So here's the conundrum. Do you slide down to let them physically fit past you and the terrain? Or do you only slide down far enough to make space for them? Now, I'm not saying it's necessarily the right move to double charge the Portal of Despair, because you are leaving yourself open to being charged by more of my units. I'm saying it was an option that was being explored and my opponent deemed that it wasn't possible. So, is it actually possible to do a double charge here? Would they slide far enough along to allow you to fit physically straight forward in there, even though the Ogre Warriors would be using up more than half of the frontage of the Portal of Despair, despite being much narrower unit than the Goblins? I'm not sure. I know that you do slide if a unit is coming into another flank or another frontage, then you can leave space for them now. It's set up that way. I don't know about this situation. I would have to double check the rules, or just more likely wait for someone to comment on it and let us know. So the Soul Flayers do push the Hunters back about 3 inches, which makes sure that they're out of range to charge anyone next turn, just keeps them at bay. And if they want to come to within a safe distance so I can't push them far enough, then they're in threat of being charged by either the Soul Flayers and the Doppelgangers, or just the Soul Flayers if I really need to hold them up for a turn. So I'm quite happy with how it's looking. The Ravagers haven't done much because they don't want to be charged by the chariots. They're just staying in a safe position there, and I can decide where to send them wherever it's required. It's probably looking like it's going to be over here since I've killed all the shooters there. Ogre turn, and we get a Titan off. We get the giant charging into the Shadow Hulk. And the Berserker Bully just looks at the doggos. Now, that's not that big of a deal to them, because I think I could probably still nimble charge into the flank of the giant if I wanted to, but I may just want to try and kill that Berserker Bully instead. Over here, the chariot makes a hindered charge into the Shadow Hounds, and the rabble, or the Sharp Stick Regiment, should I say, countercharge the Dreadfiend. Titan off, and the Hunters move forward a little bit, not that much, so I'm actually thinking I can wind blast them again now. 5 wounds are now on the Portal of Despair. The dogs only take 2 wounds as well, so they're going to be alright. Nothing much happens over here. And the giant only does 2 wounds to the Shadow Hulk, which is very, very poor. So, in this situation, would you be tempted to just bypass this bully entirely? Because I think the size of the unit, because they're nimble, they could actually make the flank charge into this giant. But I'm not going to do that because I think killing this bully is something that's very achievable for this unit. Because they're the ones with the +1 to hit, making a fresh, unhindered charge into him. So I think the chance to kill him is just presenting itself. Especially because I don't need to rush to kill the giant because it only did 2 wounds to me. So had it done loads of wounds, I would have considered this option, because I'd want to kill the giant now before it really becomes a problem. But as it stands, I think I can afford to spend a turn killing the bully. So, I'm still quite happy, not really lost anything yet. Into turn 3 for the Nightstalkers. So, the Dreadfiend wavers this unit, which is good because it just means I'm going to win that war overall. And this isn't really affecting the game, this flank, because the tokens aren't over here at all. Shadow Hounds countercharge the chariot. These ones go into the bully and kill it. The Shadow Hulk does actually get an assist in the end because this unit of Tormentors were able to see it as well, and they were in the flank. This unit could also see it, but they weren't in the flank, so I didn't send them in. I just sent the flank unit in and managed to do 14 wounds in total, and I thought that would be enough to kill it. The Shadow Hulk in the front, Tormentors in the flank. But I was wrong. Didn't quite do enough to kill it. I'm keeping 1 unit back. I'm resisting the temptation to try and hit any of these back units yet, because they're so blocked in. I don't want to just give them anything to do in the meantime. I want to just waste their time, which is why I have moved the butchers over here so that this unit definitely can't charge me. You'll also notice that I dropped a token from the scarecrows. They then went sideways onto the middle token of the battlefield and picked that up, and then the butchers came over this way and picked up the ones that the scarecrows dropped. And oh yeah, so I actually found out the way I positioned these guys was wrong, because they shouldn't still be back to back because the bully was off center. So what I actually have to do is this and turn them to look downwards, which is a way to keep them safe from being flank or rear charged by the nimble chariot in a minute, because I didn't kill that. Over on this side I just wind blasted the hunters again, and other than that didn't do anything. Quite happy sitting off there, keeping them out of the game with these 2 units. I think I can afford to do this because of this situation I've created here, where I've got an overload of value from the Portal of Despair, where I've just got 4 units tied up by that 1 unit. And it's looking very healthy at the moment. On to turn 3 for the Ogres. So the Hunters are being a bit more aggressive now, so I don't know if I can actually blast them back far enough to keep them out of the game now, so I might have to actually hit them. But because I've got this 2-on-1 situation created here, I can charge them with the Soul Flayers and move up the Doppelgangers ready to charge them next turn. So if I have to trade the Soul Flayers and they die, then that's okay, because I think the Doppelgangers would finish them off, because I'd be stealing their attack profile, which is quite good, I think. I mean, I don't know if that's entirely mathematically accurate, because I think I would suffer their ensnare probably if I have to hit them in the front if they killed the Soul Flayers, but the chances of them actually killing the Soul Flayers in 1 round, it's not 100%. So the chariot, because the doggos are denying any good opportunity there, decides to make a nimble charge into the flank of my Shadow Hulk, which is actually quite dangerous. And so the Ogres here, they do actually get a double charge in now, because there's enough space. They are hindered though. So this unit, well, my opponent figures out perhaps that they can't do it because this unit wouldn't slide far enough. Now, is that correct? Or should they slide far enough to allow this unit to get past them, despite it being an unequal amount of frontage? But in the end, he decides, you know what, the safer option that's definitely allowed is this unit would just slide this way and allow these Ogres to get in on the portal, which should be enough to kill it anyway. And it is. So the portal is dead. The Shadow Hulk is not dead, despite being attacked on all sides, well, on 2 sides. And yeah, because the portal is the only thing that died, it's looking very good for me. Although, these guys, the sharp sticks overrunning there, denies what I had eyed up, which was a flank charge from the Tormentors flying over into the flank of this unit. Can't do it because there's not enough space. Now, if they'd overrun, and I could still see them, or if they'd gone backwards, that would have opened up that as an option. But as it stands, that is not viable. So, what am I going to do now? I'm going to try and do this manoeuvre I planned over here, because I need them out of the game. So charge in there, move them into position to strike next. And I'm carrying a token with me as well, getting it further into enemy territory. In the middle, I'm going to try and finish off the sharp sticks with the Dreadfiend, who can then turn and actually join in with the rest of the game. Shadow Hounds, one into the flank of the chariot, the other one's just going to turn around and face the enemy. And the Ravagers, who haven't been able to do much yet because everyone's been locked in combat, so they haven't done too much shooting. They can move forwards and try and shoot something. And I've got my Butchers and my Scarecrows, which I can put both into this horde if I want. Turn 4, so the Dreadfiend finishes the job over on the right flank. Shadow Hounds finish off the chariot there, and the Tormentors and the Shadow Hulk finish off the Giant. So completely cleared out this side. The Butchers go into the Warriors there, and the Scarecrows go into the Sharp Stick horde. And I'm quite happy doing this because I'm not worried about the Hunters over there anymore. And doing this as well, this I think prevents these two units from really getting involved at the moment. So we're keeping a dangerous fighting unit out of the game still, and I think I actually did some shooting damage to them this time, which is why they're wounded from the hill, from the Ravagers. And keeping one unit of Tormentors back, not charging them in yet, just holding them off in reserve for now, because I'm quite happy with the situation I've got in front of me, so I don't need them yet. All I'd be doing if I charged in here, for instance, is letting them fight, which I don't want them to do yet. There's no need for it. As it stands, they're not going to be able to do anything next turn, by my reckoning, because of the positions of all these units. I don't do much damage here, but that's okay, kind of just holding them up. 8 damage there, so that's set up nicely for the Doppelgangers to finish them off if they have to. And just this side is completely mine. Now, it's not all over yet, because the token distribution is fairly even. I've got Scarecrows, they've got one, these Butchers have got one, Goblins have got one, Doppelgangers have got one, those Ogres have got one, and I think the Ogre Standard Bearer has got one. So I've got my tokens more advanced, which is an advantage in this mission, of course, but it's definitely not as one-sided as you might think just because of the stuff I killed on this flank where none of the tokens were. So I've got a little bit of a traffic jam because of this tower, but I also have nimble units here as well, and a flying unit there, and a shooting unit, so I don't necessarily need to be squeezing past my own troops too much. Well, would you look at that? The Butchers, who did 2 wounds to the Ogre Warriors, then went and suffered 10 wounds in retaliation, which is a very good return for the Ogres there, and they just killed them in one go. So, defied the odds there. Not much is going to happen here. Scarecrows take 4 wounds, which they're okay with. And that's about it. I think I actually wavered those Hunters, which is why they're stuck there and didn't countercharge. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to get my Tormentors into the game again, because obviously I can fly over things here, because the Ogres are taller than these 2 intervening units. So this unit here is going to be able to fly and charge in and hit this unit, who are already damaged, and they'll end up like there. This unit is going to be able to fly over the top and hit that unit, who are already damaged as well. So I could actually kill one or both of those if I get very lucky. If not, then I'm just setting them up with more wounds on them so my other units can finish them off. And I'm going to start sending one unit of dogs around the back as well. So, on to turn 5. Dreadfiend and the dogs just repositioning to get into the game. The 2 Tormentor units fly over into the action. And the Scarecrows and the Shadow Hulk finish off the unit here, the Sharp Sticks. So they do get exploded on. That's why I sent the Shadow Hulk in instead of the dogs, because the Shadow Hulk is already heavily damaged, so I don't want the dogs to get wounded at all. So the Shadow Hulk just absorbs the pain for them, and then steals the token off the horde. The Shadow Hulk is then going to be able to drop that token, and someone else unhurt is going to pick it up like the dogs. The Soul Flayers and the Doppelgangers combine to kill off the Hunters, so it's all good on that side as well, and the Ogres are running out of options here. I don't manage to kill those 2 units, but you can see I've got them up to 10 damage and I've got Shadow Hounds behind them, so the Standard Bearer is going to have to sacrifice himself to sit in the way of the Shadow Hounds, and that's going to leave just 2 units to play with. One of them's heavily damaged though, and I've got a lot coming at them, so it's going to be a very tall order for the Ogres to get anything out of this now. And let's see what they want to do about this then. So this unit manages to kill off the tormentors that charged them, and this unit killed off the tormentors that charged them. So all the tormentors are gone, but that's an acceptable loss, and the standard bearer is about to get charged by the doggos. Now, the dogs, I don't think they could have actually seen this unit because the ogres are the same height as each other, so I wouldn't be able to see over them. Turn 6 for the Nightstalkers. What am I going to do? I'm going to charge Soul Flayers into this flank here. I'm going to charge my Scarecrows probably into them, because they're already on 10 wounds, so they might actually be able to finish them. And then the Ravagers will be able to go into that flank here, off the hill, with the Soul Flayers. And Standard Bearer is going to get charged by the Shadow Hounds. So we could theoretically kill everything in this turn, which means my opponent would not get a turn 6, and that would take all doubt away. And that is exactly what happens. So the Shadow Hounds kill the Standard Bearer. Scarecrows finish off the horde there. I think they only did a wound or two. And Soul Flayers and the Ravagers sandwich combines to murder. And I'm holding loads of tokens. There's a couple more dotted around on the ground, I think. But irrelevant. There's everything. I think that's all the units that survived the game, all converged on that one point. So, what went really right for me here and what went very wrong for my opponent? This bit of terrain and the ogres being roadblocked behind it. As soon as I saw that, I thought, let's just chaff up that big horde that's going to struggle to chew through my units. It would keep the really tough fighting stuff behind it as long as possible. So that worked out really well. I managed to deal with the hunters successfully with the Soul Flayers, just wind blasting them, and then using these two units to double up on them, which I could afford to do because of this situation I had here. The right flank and the right flank went very well. Wasn't that necessary because there were no tokens over there, but the Dreadfiend managed to reign supreme over there against the regiment of Sharpsticks, and the Shadow Hounds did a really good job killing the shooters and then managing to take out the other stuff around there as well. So that flank got flattened by the Shadow Hounds, who were amazing coming off that hill. And so the fact that one of the units that came off the hill ended up hindered, but coming down hindered off the hill, they were on Thunderous Charge 3. And when you make hindered charge, you don't lose all your Thunderous Charge, you just lose one of them. So they still were to contribute a little bit. Still were able to contribute. And the other unit was going in unhindered, hitting on 2s with Thunderous 2, because they were coming off the hill as well. So it was just really powerful little block of dogs, and they are a really strong unit. So they're not that survivable, but they're not as like paper thin as gargoyles, but they are definitely not a chaff unit anymore. They are very hard hitting. If you're going to a tournament that you know is going to be completely plastered with difficult terrain, maybe they're not going to be the best choice to take them in multiples purely for that reason. They are worth upgrading because they have so many attacks, and any unit that has 20 attacks that's cavalry, thinking, wow, I look at the Abyssal Half-Breeds and think they've only got 16 attacks, and they're slower. They, of course, have a tiny bit higher nerve, and they have some other special rules thrown in as well. But these Shadow Hounds are just amazing. So, speed 10, hitting on 3s when they make an unhindered charge with Thunderous 1. You either get them on a hill, give them upgrades, give them +1 to hit because they're only a regiment, so you're not paying that much for it. Yeah, I just really like the Shadow Hounds. A very solid choice. I can see everyone, including 2 units of Shadow Hounds for the foreseeable future. Once you start going beyond 2, you do run the risk that you're investing a lot of points in units that can be really negatively affected based on the table layout. If there's a lot of walls, a lot of terrain, they can never benefit from Pathfinder or Strider, so you can't upgrade them with that. Then you do run the risk that you're going to have a lot of units that you've paid a lot of points for that aren't reaching their potential because of the dense, difficult terrain. So running more than 2, I think, is a big risk for that reason. If you know that the event you're playing at doesn't have that much difficult terrain, you could just take more than 2. You could take 4 or 5 regiments of them, give them different upgrades. Give 1 +1 to hit, give 1 extra Thunderous Charge, give 1 +1 critting strength, give 1 elite, for example. Yeah, but I don't know whether that would see much play, just because you are going to get difficult terrain, and once the enemy has faced them a few times with these rules, then they will know to just hug the terrain and the walls, and suddenly the Shadow Hounds are nowhere near as effective. But being speed 10 and nimble means that you don't have to throw them in immediately. You can hold them back and wait for something to come up later, and you'll be able to wrangle your way around engagements that are already going on to reach what you want to hit. So you don't always have to be aggressive with them. They are going to struggle sometimes based on the terrain, based on the kind of army they're facing. But if you find a juicy target for them, they are amazing. Shadow Hulk did a good job in this game. In one Shadow Hulk, if you take 3, again, it's one of those situations where they don't reliably put out a huge amount of damage. So if you take 3 of them, that's a huge amount of points in your army that doesn't reliably do damage. And at that point, they can be really good roadblocks. They're really good at surviving, and they've got a small frontage, so they're not going to get hit by too many units at once, generally. But I don't think 3 is ever going to be optimal for Shadow Hulks. Sadly, because I do have those 3 models. But on the other hand, I can use them for other game systems. So they are going to get play, and I can just rotate out which Shadow Hulk I use as well, so each model will get on the table in Kings of War. My Nightstalkers are mildly taking a back seat at the moment because the Abyssal Dwarves just got some new rules, which are obviously amazing and have boosted them up. But you will see the Nightstalkers back on the tournament scene soon. I'm thinking the next 2 events are probably going to be Abyssal Dwarves, just to get these new rules a good test drive, see how they go. If that goes really well, then maybe I'll stick with them for a while, but the Nightstalkers will be rotated in occasionally, especially because I think these Shadow Hounds are just so good. I want to get use out of them, especially before they have a chance to horribly nerf them at some point. Maybe they won't, because it's not just an auto-win kind of unit. You do have to position them correctly so that you're not making hindered charges, because they are very poor doing those hindered charges. You're paying a lot of points and they don't give you much back in those situations. So against an opponent who's used to them and what they can do, maybe they won't be as effective if people see them a lot and they figure out how to stop them. Doppelgangers didn't have to do too much in this game, but I think they're a good choice. They actually terrified my opponent more than any other unit, because I think he's faced them a lot and was thinking that they were just going to completely devastate what they hit. So he kind of wanted to stay away from them as much as possible, but in the end could not escape them. Yeah, I've got 2 armies for Kings of War that I just really enjoy playing a lot at the moment, and it's a lot of fun. Nightstalkers and Abyssal Dwarves. I've got multiple other armies. I've got Goblins, I've got Undead, I've got Halflings, which I used to run as the League of Rordia. They can also be run as Undead. I can run both my Undead armies as Empire of Dust, probably. I've got an Ogre army that I haven't painted yet. And do I have incentive to paint those Ogres? Not right now, because these 2 armies that I'm currently playing are just so much fun anyway. It's not entirely necessary right now. So, very solid outing for the Nightstalkers there. And it started well, and it only went uphill from there. Just a very good round of murder. That's the only way you can describe it, really. Killed a lot of stuff, set up some good positions, killed more stuff, held all the tokens, won the game. So don't forget to like the video, don't forget to subscribe, obviously. Check out all the links in the description, the various social media shenanigans going on down there. There's Twitter, Facebook group, Discord server, and all that good stuff. And obviously don't forget to donate all your life savings to this channel via Patreon or PayPal if you want to see more battle reports and tournament reports flowing at you. And this has been, or will be actually, when you see the 3rd game. I think, well, is this one going out 3rd? I think this battle report might be going out 3rd, actually. I recorded 3, or photographed 3 all in one day, and then I've done the recording of them later that day as well. And 2 of them are just coming out on later dates, so they're not all just clumped up together. So I might try and do this more often, actually. Try and get a day playing Kings of War multiple games and make them into individual battle reports. They do actually do way better numbers, individual battle reports, than tournament reports do at times. But I just prefer a tournament to have kind of a cohesive, one long breakdown of the army as it goes through different enemies, rather than having to start off describing the army list again at the start. because it is more of a journey, because you learn something in game 1 and take it directly into game 2 and apply those lessons immediately, so I want to be able to comment on it in that style. So I do prefer doing the tournament reports in one go, even though it's worse for the channel for viewership reasons. So if you want to mitigate that, give me all your money or something, and subscribe obviously, and like everything. Anyway, all that remains to be said at this point is, good night out there, whatever you are.